In the Year 9 Computer Science combined group that you're all members of, I have a look down here, it shows me everyone who's in here, so both groups are in here. In the classwork, we've worked through a few things: pseudocode, bit of Python, technical terms. Then we went on to JavaScript coding, which I did before Easter, and this was using the phaser.js Codecademy project. So that was just working through, and there's some videos in there. If you haven't done those, it's just of interest. It was nice using these programming other syntax, the high level language, and we've seen evidence of that. And we'll be using JavaScript programming when we do more Greenfoot work later on this term. We were going to set you a project. Now next year you're going to be doing a controlled assessment as part of the course, and you will in that controlled assessment have to do a write-up. You're given a task, and so I've given you this. I've given an example here. It's called Home and Away. It's a football tournament. You don't know that at the moment, so you're going to have a look at Home and Away write-up document, which will be available to you here, and you can document it in Google Docs. Before you do so, you'll need to install Python and PyScripter, and I've said in that order, onto your system. So if I go to installing, I've just put instructions here. Use version 3.3 as preferred. It's not necessarily the case, but it's the version that we use in school. So I'm going to go to the PyScripter website. It takes me to PyScripter, and there's version 3.3, but I must install Python first. So I go to the Python website. You can see it's got the Python link first. Go to the Python website and find version 3.3. And it's in fact version 3.3.5 that I'm going to use. That was the one that we've installed in school. So 3.3.5, download it and install it. If you have any issues with that, I've got other videos on my YouTube channel that show how to install that. But if you need that, email me, glewis@sandwell.org. I'm quite happy to do another video to show you how to do that. Then when I go to PyScripter, I would do then PyScripter, and I'd just use the setup rather than the zip. You can use the zip and carry it around on a memory stick with you if you want, but I use the setup, and I'm going to install that, and then I'm going to be able to use that program on my system. I'm back in to Google Classroom then, and my Home and Away project, the write-up document, comes up. I will also stress that I've asked some warm-up tasks. Just get used to using, there's the Python Zigzag book, just get used to using lists and write into files again. They're chapter 6, and if I go to this, chapter 6 in this Zigzag book, it's on page 20. I drag that down, page 20 here, and it talks about lists, how to work with lists, and I'll be putting some videos up about lists and filing systems, about pop and count and remove and reverse and so on and extend, and some of those. But just being able to work with lists is going to be very useful for this Home and Away system, I think. Don't worry about doing the exercises at the end, we would have done those in school. Then also working with files, about writing to files, appending to files, and also reading from files as well, which is one of the things the system needs to do. In the Home and Away document, you all will have a document, but if I go to Home and Away and open this document up, and it comes up like this, so it talks GCSE Computer Science, it says Project Home and Away. Now it says writing frame. You won't have a writing frame for your coursework. We will of course prepare you for it. It'll probably be this time next year. So in 2021 you'll be doing it. You'll have had lots of preparation beforehand, but here's an example of a title. You won't have a writing framework, but we'll have talked to you what's required in a write-up, for example. So here's the scenario. Sunita Williams organised annual competition. Read through it. Here's some objectives. So these 6 objectives, this is what it wants to do. Input the scores from each game, store them in a file, record the points for home and away, record if the points are home and away, display all teams, and at the end allow the user to search for a team and its results and so on. Right. That's spelled wrong. Glad I looked through that. Complete the following report. So all I'm asking you to do is fill in the gaps here, really, with quite a bit of text, but I've asked for half a page of text for an introduction. Really, I'm just looking here. Have you read through the brief? Have a read of it and put it in your own words, in essence. Very short, just a half a page of A4, maybe even less than that, a quarter page of A4. Maybe I should have done that. quarter page of A4 and I'll change that. So just a quick summary of what you've read up here and what you think. Talk about that you're going to design, implement and test the system and then finally evaluate it at the end. You'll see that now as we step through this here. You're going to use what's called the SILI tools of high-level language, which allows sequencing, step-by-step programming through for line by line, etc. Choice, which is also called selection, but that's if statements, lots of those in your programming. Iteration, which is loops, which repeats code, and also language constructs and so on, such as def for functions and a number of different other things. Also allows interaction with the environment. Now we're going to use PyScript to do this, as you do in school. Lovely, nice little editor, and an IDE, integrated development environment, allows us to be able to work with Python and telling us when we've got errors and what errors they are, and a few little tips as we go along. Then section 1, a bit long here, a page and a half, analysis of the task. So I ask you to talk about what have you been asked to do, give a little bit more, but now start splitting it into, right, what information is going to be needed to be input. So what data and so on, you can have a read through there, what you think. There's no definite rights and wrongs here, but quite obviously I'm going to need the team name and how many goals they've scored and who they're playing against. Maybe you'll want to know the venue and how many people were there or whatever else, who the goal scorers were, entirely up to you. Then you can talk about data structures, what information are you going to want. What processes, these are the verbs, the doing words. So I'm going to add, I'm going to enter, I'm going to search for data, I'm going to save it to file, I'm going to print it out onto screen, I'm going to change, edit if a mistake has been made, I'm going to validate, making sure that data is suitable, reasonable, acceptable and so on. What are the outputs from the system? They could be visual outputs, they could be warnings, they could be errors, they could be a league table or something like that. That you're going to test it, and the objectives are going to be set. Okay, now 6 objectives are already there at the very start. Okay, things that it needs to do, you can add to that. Half a page then you're going to set out success criteria for how you're going to determine whether this system is a success or not at the end, because your client's really only going to pay you for a system that does as they required. So I've asked you to identify the objectives of the system. Well, some of those are already up there, you may add some more, but what I've said here, the program will provide the user with instructions on how to enter each of the week's results. The program will, and I put down here, will validate the scores to ensure that they're not too small or too high. The program will calculate, and there we are. So I've put 8 of those down there, and so I've said you should aim for 8 criteria. So, but create some more criteria there. How are you going to determine? You may determine it as being user friendly. Is it user friendly and intuitive? If that's one of the success criteria the client wants, then brilliant. Put it down as one of those. Part of this quarter of a page, justify your method of solution. So we're going to use this integrated development environment in PyScript. No other choice here, you're going to use that for this year. Next year we're going to be doing some Visual Basic work, and we may choose to use that. But PyScript for this year, why are you using it? The coding is nice in colours, you've used it before, it's got debugging tools, it's got a nice interface, it gives error messages, it compiles the high level language, it allows you to loop, it allows you to use if statements and so on. So we're using PyScript with the Python, and it allows us to do all these things, which is great. It's a lovely programming language, but it's also a lovely programming editor to use, and it gives us all those tools. So just say that, and there's really an answer for that part. Right, algorithm design. We did it earlier on when we were talking about pseudocode, just about 2 weeks before Easter. So here's some examples. Pseudocode isn't computer code. Pseudocode, so I've said input name, input age. Now Python would give an error if we put it in like that. So, it's got to use brackets and quotation marks and that sort of thing. So in Python it's that. Pseudocode is that. So don't go right in the Python code, but use pseudocode, which is really code, coding type constructs, but you're not following the rules of any language. So really speaking, this should be easily translated into any high level language: Python, Visual Basic, Java, Pascal, whatever it may be. Okay, so there's some ideas on pseudocode, but the pseudocode should be for all your processes. Now, you may not get all your processes in one, maybe 2 pages of algorithms, but have a go at these processes, which I go back up to here, which are all the doing verbs: adding data to a file, entering data, searching, comparing scores to find out who's won, attributing points, adding points to the table or something like that. Okay, so all those algorithms, and at the bottom of this put some examples in for validation. Validation means data is suitable, reasonable or acceptable. Then team name, here's one team name, you enter the team name. Is the length of the team name greater than 20? If it is, the team name is too long. Now, you may think the 20 is not too long. There may be some teams have got longer than 20 characters, but it should suffice for what we're doing. Or change the number. If team name is equal to blank, then we're checking that they've entered a team name there. So presence check failed. I'm entering goals equals enter number of goals. If goals are less than 0, that's an invalid number of goals. So there's some examples for validation. So just put into here, you can, if you want to, when you're typing this in, delete everything and just type. Or type underneath your answers or your writing and then remove that at a later point, or even just leave it in, and I'm quite happy to read that later on. Once we've now designed the system as data structures, validation rules, processes, inputs, outputs, we're now able to implement, actually put it into practice in PyScripter. So we may want some lists here that we're going to create, some prompts that are going to tell the user what information you're after. Remember, somebody else is going to use this. And in this section, you're going to paste in your annotated code once it's finished. And then after that, testing. I said this very early on in the first part of it. We're going to test it, and this should be about 2 or 3 pages. This includes screenshots. It's going to be a table with test data. What are you going to enter in? What's the expected outcome? What's the actual outcome? In my next table, I give an example of that. I'm going to enter in test data, I put all that in. Ensure that that should be team name is not too long. That's the success criteria. Expected outcome, an error message to appear. Reason for test, validate the suitable team names. And was it a success? Yes, I'll say it was in my program. Here's some other examples of test data. It may be used for a particular test. Below that, we need to see evidence of those tests. So that's screenshots of the program actually working. You may want to save those screenshots to computer system before you paste back into here. But on this, if you do right and click and paste, it's not going to work. You've got to use Control and V to paste it in place, or you may have to insert an image and get it from your computer. But I want to see evidence of testing there to show what your program actually does. I've also said there, produce feedback from a user. Someone at home can be testing your system, or email one of your classmates. They're all doing the same project. You can test theirs as well then. But send them a Python program via email, or share it via Google Drive if you want, and they can try it out and show evidence of their email response and what they thought, maybe with 3 points in it. 3 points that are good, or 3 points that could be improved. Entirely up to you. Okay, and then evaluation, which is about half a page long, and it should discuss the outcomes of the testing, each success criteria. How well is it for correctness and fitness for purpose? Sorry, I've gone over a page. I should have tidied that up a bit. Understand its efficiency. Does it work well? Is it fast enough? Does it do what it's intended to do? Description of the successful features from the success criteria, and then areas for future development. Right, what would you develop in the future? And it talks you in there about what's required. Okay, this should take you good 2-3 weeks, and I'll be in touch and tell you a little bit more about what we're then going to do following that.